Hare Krishna. Here at Brahmanda Ghat is celebrated the cherished and the relationship of Vatsalya Rasa with Yashoda and Krishna in his childhood. And this morning we talked about Krishna, his appearance in the world, and although there's danger, as there's danger in Vrindavan, they moved to Gokula, in this area, and Krishna has his childhood here. And as described in the 10th canto, 8th chapter of the Bhagavatam, the childhood pastimes of Krishna, when he was very tiny, he and Balaram would play together in the mud of Gokul, mud and clay. So there's a way in which their bodies, Krishna blackish, Balaram whitish, were sometimes smeared with the pigments of the earth here because they'd play in the ground, on the ground here in Gokula. And they gave pleasure to all the residents of Gokula who would be mesmerized by the childhood pastimes of Krishna and Balaram. When their mothers would pick them up, they would see that they had small teeth coming in. And as they grew older, they would play more vigorously. Sometimes, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna and Balaram would grab onto the tail of a calf. And when the calf or cow would discover that there was a little child holding on to their tail, they would take off, and Krishna and Balaram would be towed along the grounds and enjoy in that way. But Krishna's personality came out here in Gokula that he liked to steal. It's not that he didn't have enough to eat at home, because Yashoda was always feeding him and making sure that he had enough. We know that she would even bring milk from special cows that Nanda had picked out of all the herds, the very best. But Krishna liked to eat stolen goods. And as noted in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he would go to neighbors' homes and he would steal yogurt, butter, milk products. He liked that better when it was stolen. And when he would be caught sometimes in people's homes stealing, they would chide him with the residents and say, "You're a thief." And Krishna would look at them and say, "You're a thief." And if they didn't have anything in their home, Krishna would break items in the house and then leave after having vandalized the place. Sometimes if he was challenged while stealing, he would challenge back. And in one commentary I read this morning said he would threaten the homeowner, "I'll go home and get a coal from the oven, I'll come back and burn your house down." And sometimes what he would steal, he would give everything to the monkeys. And then when they were full, he would tell the householders that, "See, they won't eat any of your stuff because it's not that good." And while playing in this way, the neighbors would come to Yashoda and they would say, "Your son is being so naughty." But when he'd come before Yashoda, he'd have an innocent, charming look on his face, and everyone would say, "Oh, we can't chastise him." These are the loving dealings Krishna had with Yashoda. And in the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse by Parikshit Maharaj when he's asking Srila Gosvāmī about the devotional service of Mother Yashoda. Nanda kim akarod brahman, shaya yasya param hari. That how did she become, and how did Nanda Maharaj become Shreya? How did they become so fortunate? Papo yasya stanam hari. But Yashoda, she's, in this verse, he says she's Mahabhaga. She's the most fortunate because she was always with Krishna. When Nanda would go out to do his work, taking care of his kingdom, Yashoda would be with Krishna all day long when he was a child. And sometimes, Papo yasya stanam hari. Stanam means the breast, and Papo means he would drink. He would suckle from her breast. And who is this? How is she so fortunate that she's here with the Supreme Personality of Godhead? A similar question or point comes up in the story of Aghasura, when Parikshit Maharaj wants to know who the little boys are who are playing with Krishna. And Srila Gosvāmī answers, Itam satam brahma sukhana bhutya dasyam katanam paradaivatena mayashitanam naradarakena sakambrajaru kritapunya punjaha. There are many different kinds of people have relationships with Krishna, but Parikshit said, how is it that these boys are playing with as friends, sometimes wrestling with him, treating him as an equal or an inferior even? And he said, Kritapunya Punja, after many, many lifetimes of devotional service and pious activity, they had the qualification to play with Krishna as friends. And of course, Yashoda is described as being Krishna's eternal mother. It's not that someone, as Rūpa Gosvāmī explains in the Nectar of Devotion, can become Yashoda. However, one can be in the mood of Yashoda and follow in her footsteps. Her mood of devotional service, as we know from the Nectar of Devotion, is called Vatsalya. This love that a mother has for her child or father. And in the pastime that takes place here at Brahmanda Ghat, it's to explain how Krishna is chanchal. He's always causing some disturbance, stealing, playing in such a way that Yashoda is always in anxiety. And this is something that our great acharyas, commenting on this chapter about Krishna in his childhood, say that this is the best kind of samadhi. This is written by Jiva Goswami in this section. He says that the meditation that Yashoda has is anxiety, constantly wondering what's Krishna gotten into, what's he going to do next, whose house is he robbing. And he says this is the best or the superior samadhi because she's always thinking of Krishna in parenthood and completely attached to him. So here at Brahmanda Ghat, one day, as is recounted in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna was playing with all his friends, and they came to Yashoda and lodged a complaint against him. What was the complaint? They said he ate dirt. And Yashoda came to reprimand Krishna and said, Krishna, your friends, even Balaram has confirmed that you've eaten dirt here. And Krishna said, of course, I beat them in a game, and now they've conspired. And he said, they're lying. Reading through the various opinions of the acharyas, interesting too, because great acharyas, sense-controlled, elevated souls are commenting on the activities of a little child eating dirt. And they say, well, whether he ate dirt literally or he didn't eat dirt, he pretended to eat dirt just to agitate the minds, agitate his mother's mind. And they describe it in terms of a way of stimulating her ecstatic love called sanchari bhav, which is a kind of wave that comes in to stimulate a particular kind of love that a devotee has for Krishna, in this case, vatsalya. And the sanchari bhav is called chanchal, because Krishna is so fickle and doing so many things every day. That disturbance stimulates the feeling that Yashoda has for Krishna in her heart. So she wants forensic evidence that Krishna didn't eat dirt, or she's checking to see if he did. So she says, open your mouth. And when Krishna opens his mouth here at Brahmandagat, Yashoda, quite naturally, because Krishna's the embodiment of everything and the source of everything, sees within her mouth all the universes, all the energies everywhere, and she even sees herself within the mouth of Krishna. And momentarily, she's taken aback, thinking, I'm treating this little boy as my son, but actually he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just as fast as she thinks this, Krishna, not wanting to spoil her mood of motherhood, covers his opulence. And she thinks, well, anyway, just don't eat dirt again. And says to him, don't eat dirt. In a verse that was spoken by Raghupati Upadhyaya, who is a learned Brahmana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was traveling in South India, he had met this highly sophisticated person who is learned in the scripture, upright in his practices of devotional service, and Mahaprabhu took a liking to him, so he asked him to say something about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada quotes this verse in several places. It's also included in the Padyavali. And it goes with the overall mood of devotional service that's prevalent here at Brahmandagat, this Vatsalya mood. And Raghupati Upadhyaya said, Shrutim apare smritim itare bharatam bhajantu bantam iha nanda yasyalinde param brahma. Said, some people worship the Shrutis, some people the Smritis, some people Mahabharat, because bhajantam pitam, they're afraid of material existence and they want to be free from it, so they study all these things. He says, but for me, iha vande nanda, ham vande, I worship Nanda Maharaj, yasya lindi param brahma, because the Supreme Brahman, as a little child, little baby, is crawling around in his courtyard. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would like that very much. And when he was speaking to Vyankatabhatta in South India, he was talking about the superiority of pure devotional service, the pure devotional service of the residents of Vrindavan. This is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach, that the topmost path of self-realization is to follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. And when he asked Venkata why it is that in the Ramanuja Sampradaya they worship Lakshmi Devi, Lakshmi Narayan, he said, so why is it that your goddess, Lakshmi, tried to enter into the association of the gopis of Vrindavan? She wanted to enter into the rasa dance. And she couldn't. Venkata, when Mahaprabhu said, so why couldn't she enter? He said, you're my teacher, you please tell me. He said, because she has the abhiman, or the mood of opulence and worshiping Lord Narayan, and she couldn't give that up to follow the simple mood of the devotees in Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu brought that up, and he quoted a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam to Venkata. Nayam sukapo bhagavan dehinam gopika sutta jnaninam chatmabhutanam yata bhakti matam iha. And that is that people have many ways of trying to approach the Supreme, but none is superior to the simple, sublime love of the residents of Vrindavan. Nayam sukapo bhagavan dehinam gopika sutta. And he specifically refers to Yashoda and the intensity of her love for Krishna as a little child. So Prabhupada came to Vrindavan regularly, and in one visit for several days, the devotees gathered together and he taught them the nectar of devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He spoke on that. And very soon, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust is coming out with the full Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in about 5 volumes. And it has the commentaries that Prabhupada wrote himself, not for the whole thing, but for the beginning. Because he did write some commentaries, but rather than publish those, he had written his summary of the nectar called the Nectar of Devotion. But it's one of the most important of the books in our Gaudiya Vaishnava canon, and highly recommended for everyone, Prabhupada said, to understand the science of devotional service. So we can remember here at Brahmandagat, just such a sublime place, isn't it? You have the breeze coming from the Jamuna, and everyone's happy, and these beautiful trees who have been witnessing devotees coming here for who knows how long. And we can remember the simple, sublime path of pure devotional service, and how the devotees enter into that path by Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantaksto Hibadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. By hearing about Krishna, by hearing Krishna Katha, then naturally Krishna helps to diminish the anarthas, or unwanted things within the heart. And then gradually, Nashtaprayishu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamo Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. One notices the diminishment of these obstacles, and there's a time at which Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava Kamalubadayashchaye Chaitayatera Navidam Stitam Sattve Prasidati. One's mind comes to Shuddha Sattva. And unless one becomes purified by hearing and practicing devotional service, no one can understand Krishna. Only with a pure mind. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. Lord Shiva says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, only when your mind comes to the point of Shuddha Sattva, then can you understand or see Krishna. So we can remember that the great acharyas have endorsed the path of pure devotional service, which means to follow the ways of Srila Rūpa Gosvāmī, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and our founder Acharya, who is intimately connected with the Goswamis through the great teachers, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, etc. And anyone from any position who takes up the process of hearing, chanting, remembering, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says in the Upadeshamrita, starting with copious hearing, will notice that he or she is advancing in devotional service. So we can pray here at Brahmandakat to remember Krishna's pastime of lying. And there's a specific phrase that our acharyas give for the charm of Krishna, God as a child, lying to his mother. Say, I didn't do that. They're lying. No, I'm not lying. They're lying. And also, we have a God who eats dirt and then opens his mouth and all the universes are there. That's captivating and charming. And we can go on hearing about that again and again and become absorbed in the mood of Vrindavan. And now I'd like to hear from His Grace Vishnu Gada Prabhu.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu. Following your discussion, so I work with kids sometimes in a kind of psychology type kids, and if a child, young kid, is they take from their own house, well, it might be a little difficult, but it's not usually a big deal, isn't it? You know, they steal the cookie out of the cookie jar. Nobody's going to condemn. But if they steal outside, that's more concerning. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So just as Vaisesika Prabhu said, so that was increasing Mother Yashoda's anxiety, because not only he was stealing outside from others, the elderly gopis, so that increased the anxiety for her. And what did she do? She wanted to make sure she got special cows that would eat special grasses that were really sweet. I know that sometimes we get milk from Gita Nagari in New York, in the United States, and once the cows there wandered off to a place where there was chives. So guess what the milk tasted like? Yeah, chives. So they couldn't. So, you know, the quality of the grass does really affect the quality of the milk. So Mother Yashoda was really careful that she was going to get really good grass for that milk that she would get for Lord Krishna. Nato natyadaro yata. Just like a child, he's incredibly expert in showing that way. And in contrast, didn't Lord Chaitanya also eat dirt? Did he lie about it? Did he lie about it? No. He tried to explain it, right? He tried to explain it away. Well, really, dirt and food is just a different kind of dirt. So what's the big deal? Remember? But you know, I don't know if it's because in that he's a Brahmin in that, and so he's not supposed to lie. Or, you know, Brahmins, satyam, socham, like that. But anyway, his mother, she responded. What did she respond? You remember?
Who taught you this?
Yes. Yeah, you get earth. Yeah, but earth in the form of a pot, you can put water in, it'll hold water, but you can't just pour water on a bunch of dirt and it's expected to. So according to the uses and according to the purposes, you know, you can't eat dirt and think it'll nourish you, because that's Mayavadi philosophy. So she was right off the bat instructing her son in the proper way of understanding the difference between Mayavada philosophy and Vaishnava philosophy. Even though she was just the housewife there, she knew that difference. And just one other thing is, the universal form that Lord Krishna showed to Mother Yashoda here, it's sometimes hard to get, at least for me, to get my mind around the universal form because it's mind-boggling. That on purpose, it's mind-boggling. We see Arjuna in Bhagavad-gīta, he was just overwhelming by that universal form. And Duryodhana, he saw a partial universal form, but he said, I don't want to see it. It's just mystic, just some mystic magic. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, that's it. And in the verse this morning, we heard that there was a parallel between the Virat Rupa and did you remember what it was parallel that Pṛcchati Maharaj was saying in the verse this morning? He compared the Virat Rupa and time. And time. And so some kalos me. Who are you? Who are you? Arjuna says. And Krishna says, kalos, I am time. So I was thinking, if you step back, now we have time-lapse photography. Sometimes it's fun to see time-lapse photography. Now if you step back and you had time-lapse photography for like millions and millions of years, what would you see? What would you see? You'd see, people being born, growing, and dying, growing, civilizations building, maintaining, and then collapsing. It's everything created and destroyed. And it would be, if I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, that's scary to me. Unless there's a person behind it and you're not part of that whole cycle. You're actually a spirit soul beyond that cycle. Otherwise, it's incredibly scary. And there was a movie a while ago about Noah's Ark. And Noah, in that movie, they say that there was a devastation of flood. It's like we do in between the Manus. A partial devastation. There was a devastation of flood. And millions and millions of people were drowned. And people responded, well, what kind of God would allow that to happen? Just kill all those people. It's a little tough to deal with, right? Well, of course, if you step back, Krishna kills everybody. Everybody's killed by who's killing that Krishna's arrangement, at least on the physical level. But if we know that the source of all this birth and death, time, the universal form is a person, and you can develop love for that person through bhakti yoga, as Mother Yashoda is showing in her pastimes, then gives us solace to continue in our devotional service and feel safe. Bhajahure manna Shri Nanda Nandana Abhoya Charanara Vindare Dulabha Manava Janma Satsange Taraha E Bhava Sindare. Govinda Das Kaviraj prays. Until just recently, I didn't realize this is actually the whole verse. He's saying, come on, get with it. To his mind. Oh, my mind, please worship the son of Maharaj Nanda. Because look, you've got this human form of life and it's very difficult. Durlabha manava, satsange. And now we have association of devotees. This is a wonderful thing. And by doing that, we can cross over the ocean of birth and death, go beyond that universal form, and come to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada came to this Brahmanda Ghat with his disciples, but he also had a godbrother with him, O.B.L. Kapoor, also known as Adi Keshava Das, who was a professor. He wrote many books. And Prabhupada had, for us, when we only knew Prabhupada, but in the rare times when Prabhupada would be with his godbrothers, it was a great fascination because he was in a completely different mood than he was around his disciples. His Prabhupada was the leader of international society, and he was Paramahamsa. He was also the guru of everybody in the movement. So when any of his godbrothers came, we saw a different side of him. There was a godbrother named Kṛṣṇa Krishnadas Babaji who would come to visit Prabhupada, and sometimes they would sit on the same seat, and Prabhupada would joke with them and they would laugh. And a lot of laughter, side-splitting laughter, slapping knee laughter, being together. And when he came here to Brahmandagat, his godbrother, O.B.L. Kapoor, Adi Keshava, Prabhu came here with him. And it was a little bit of a cool day, and the water of the Jamuna is a little cold also. And Prabhupada said to his disciples, you can go take a bath, because they were eager to go in. Jamuna used to be noticeably more clear. Here it looks very clear. In other places it's not so much because it gets mixed upstream with and diverted and so forth. But when we used to come to Vrindavan, it was so clear and clean that we'd all go down to the Jamuna and sit there and just read and dive in and get back out again. And it was crystal clear. And that time Prabhupada told his disciples, you go in. He said, I'm too old. Then when he saw them getting into the Jamuna here, Prabhupada became enlivened. And with his godbrother sitting next to his godbrother, he started taking off his jacket. And I think there's some photos of Prabhupada taking bath here, as he got inspired by seeing everybody else go into the Jamuna here, and his godbrother was there. They're trained up here. There's a little school, they train them and send them out to different areas. But it's also a great benediction of the process of Krishna consciousness that we have loving exchanges, and that fills up the heart. In some systems of so-called self-realization, one gives up all sense of connection, loving connection with friends, family, and so forth for the sake of becoming a dry impersonalist and detaching from the material world altogether. But I was just thinking, Krishna consciousness means Krishna's family. And all of the elements that everyone's looking for in their life for loving exchanges is there in Krishna's pastimes with his mother, his father, his friends, and so forth. But also in the association with devotees. We have godbrothers, godsisters, nephews, aunts, uncles, grandchildren. Everything's there, only on a spiritual platform. Are you spying monkeys coming? And so I was just appreciating, I could say, after many years in Krishna consciousness, that one of the aspects that I relish the most is being with my godbrothers or godsisters. And as time goes on, it becomes more relishable because it's obviously rarer. There are fewer of us. So I just thinking to say, take advantage of the deep friendships that you have, the loving exchanges. Rūpa Gosvāmī puts it in his book on devotional service and says, dadāti pratigṛhṇāti, guhyam ākhyāti pṛcchati, bhuṅkte bhojayate caiva, ṣaḍ-vidhaṁ prīti-lakṣaṇam, ṣaḍ-vidhaṁ prīti-lakṣaṇam. That have these loving exchanges with the devotees because it's a mainstay of the process of devotional service. Do you agree? Do you want to say anything about it? No? Does anybody have any reflections or questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji,
Purple haze.
thank you so much, Prabhuji. This is a question coming from a reflection. You spoke about the forensic evidence which Mother Yashoda asked Krishna about this place. Just if somebody else asks us this question, how do we solidly say that this is actually the place where these pastimes happened?
Oh, well, Vrindavan and all the holy places are really less about a geological exact physical location, and they're more about the mood of the particular place. Of course, some of the holy places were discovered by great devotees. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, as mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, had discovered Radhakund Shamakund. When he came to Vrindavan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking, where's Radhakund? Where's Shamakund? And none of the locals even knew. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw a little pool of water, it was basically agricultural fields at the time, and he saw somebody near the water and he got inspired and he went there and he bathed in it and he said, this is Radhakund. And similarly, although with more scientific backing, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in discovering the Yogapith, the place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, had looked at ancient maps. He did a lot of research about where it is exactly according to histories and the Shastra. But that wasn't it. He also had revelation because, as we know from his vantage point from his home, where we visit every year, he also is reported to have seen a trail of dust every morning around Mangalartik time coming from the Sringapali and ending up in the now distinguished place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Yogapith. And he discerned, oh, it's Lord Nrsingadev coming to worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for Mangalartik. What to speak of having a vision of the Adbhut Mandir, and then finally for confirmation, with all the different kinds of evidence, he came with his revered spiritual masters, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who when he arrived went into ecstasy and reportedly started dancing even though he's an invalid. So there are many ways in which the holy places have been revealed. The Goswāmīs did that kind of work, and so did Vajranabh, who is Krishna's grandson. Because after the disappearance of Krishna, there were many places that were not well known. And he did a lot of not only research, but also asking the sadhus that were still there and triangulated to come to these particular places. But ultimately, it's not vital. It's not as if we have to find some physical evidence exactly in one place to say that, okay, this is the exact place. Because it's just as Vaishnavas, although they depart from their physical bodies, they live in sound. And the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam is the direct experience of the spiritual world. And coming to the Holy Dham, which has the same vibration, you may meet people who say, oh, Krishna stepped here, this rock was melted, and so forth. Whether it wasn't or wasn't, the local people there and those who come there have that bhav, that Krishna's all lotus foot is here, and they worship it like that. Does that help? Okay. Oh my goodness, we got to go. I don't know, I can't guarantee we won't be in a traffic jam. Also, wanted to apologize because we learned a lesson today to not come here late on a Friday. Although the big mela we had down at Ramanreti for a while, distributing books along the way, was not just uproarious, but it was kind of blissful. Wasn't it?
Kirtan too.
The kirtan, the book distribution, seeing people going by in rickshaws with lollipops and books in their hand, and watching the reactions of people to Harinam is my favorite thing in the world. When people come out and they hear the holy name and you see they become stunned, and especially here in the Dham, these people are so pious and simple. There was a group of ladies that came out, and you could just see they were captured by the holy name, and other people were too, because they have good hearts. Most of them don't eat meat, and they're worshippers of Krishna since they were born, and it just hits them and they radiate. That was something special. Yes? Well, I didn't call on them, and we have to go because it's late, and tonight's our last night, so we want to save a little time so we can have an evening program. We came, we braved the traffic, we sat here, we had some discussion, and if you have questions, comments, reflections, we'll see what we can do tonight. Does that sound good? Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dear Yashoda and Nanda, if you so desire, please instill in our hearts a desire to hear, chant, and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the authorized literatures given to us by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And please empower us to spread this transcendental vibration and the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra all over the world so that people can become saved from the dangerous Kali Yuga. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part, right here at Brahmanda Ghat. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande.